So I'm seriously considering starting a blooper reel because this is literally like the 10th time that I have started this video. And if I knew how to edit like properly, I would probably just run with that. But since I don't and I just do it in one shot, we are running this video through all the way through. You guys ready? Let's go. All right, so day 6. Today we're going to be talking about life as a temporary assignment. Last week we talked about how we are to live our life with the view or with the knowledge of sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me today. Here we go. We talked about how we have to live life through God's point of view, or be able to view our life through his view, through his perspective. And so we talked about 3 truths. Our life is a test. Our life is a trust. That was last week. And this week we're going to talk about the 3rd point, which is life is a temporary assignment. So here we go. So we all know that life is really short, right? I feel like the only people who think that they're going to live forever are like teenagers or something. Even kids at the end of summer vacation will tell you that time flies when you're having fun, right? And the older you get, the more you grow into this life, the more mature you become. You realize that the choices that you make do matter and do affect your future. But not only that, there is just so much to do with and there's so little time. Such a cliche statement, but so very true. And so the Bible tells us the same thing. It has metaphors for life, like life is a mist, life is a breath, a blade of grass that withers in the sun, a wisp of smoke. All of these are temporary, fleeting, like gone, right? Job 8:9 says, "For we were born but yesterday and know nothing. Our days on earth are as fleeting as a shadow." Like 1 second here, 1 second there, gone, right? Rick Warren tells us we have to make the best use of our life. It's a small little section, and it has such a big weight on eternity. And so because of that, we have to be able to use our time wisely. We have a limited amount, and so use it wisely, right? So he tells us that we have to ask God to help us see life on earth, right? While we're here, our time here, we have to be able to see it the way God sees it. And to never forget 2 truths. And these are the 2 truths. First, compared with eternity, life is extremely brief. We've talked about that in the past lessons, right? It's like your life is a parenthesis. You have the time before in God's mind. You have the time after in eternity. And so it's but a brief moment, but important. And then second, earth is only a temporary residence. You won't be here long, so don't get attached. King David said, "Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered and that my life is fleeing away." Nobody dies before their time. God has a set time out. And so whatever time you have here on earth, whatever it is that you're going to get done, God has that in his mind. And so here, King David is telling God, don't let me forget that I am not immortal yet, at least, right? I am not, this life is not forever here on earth. And so that prayer, I think, should be important to all of us, right? Sometimes we go through life and we're just like clockwork, right? We're just pushing in the pegs. We're just going through the motions, right? All those cliches about time. But when we remember, okay, like, I don't have a lot of time here on earth, and I was set here for a purpose, and that purpose comes from God, it's easier for us to get the things done because we go, okay, crunch time, I guess, right? Kind of like when you're in finals and you've been procrastinating for like ever, and then you realize, oh shoot, like the assignment is due like next week. It's crunch time. You kick into the gears. And so in the same way, that's what this prayer is saying, God, like, remind me that this is a short time and I got to get things done. Let me get moving, right? And so just always have that in your mind. We were made for another world, right? We're only here temporarily. And so the Bible uses terms like alien, pilgrim, foreigner, visitor, stranger, traveler to describe our time here on earth, our life. Psalms says, I am only a foreigner in this land. Don't hide your commands from me. Here, the psalmist talking to God, he's saying, look, I know I'm only here temporarily. I am a foreigner in this land. And the beauty that I find in this verse is that he follows it up with, don't hide your commands from me. His priority was what God said for his life. His purposes for our lives should be our priority, right? And so from the moment that you first open your eyes to the moment where you take your last breath, those should be filled with moments where it's you and God getting things done, right? That's our mission. That's our purpose. 1 Corinthians says, those who use the things of the world should not become attached to them, for this world as they know it will soon pass away. We use, like this verse says, so many things of this world. We use our houses, our beds, our money, our time, you name it. We use this life. But this verse is saying, don't get attached to them, though. They're going to fade away. And we know that's a fact. We can't take anything with us when we die. And so if we're holding on to things, we get wrapped up in the things of this life. And like many people, I don't want to die yet, right? For example, we've all seen that movie with some end of the world disaster, right? And so there's always that one dumb kid that's like, I haven't had sex yet. I'm too young to die, right? You know exactly what we're talking about. And we laugh because it's like, oh my God, what an idiot, right? But that's how a lot of us live through life. I have heard Christians, so many Christians, oh, I don't want to die before I get married. Like, okay, that's priority number one. Gotcha, you know? Or any number of things, right? Like I want to, make CEO, I want to do this, and these are all good ambitions, but there's a difference between using those to move through life and to complete the purposes God gave us, and then there's getting so attached to those things that we don't want to let go of this life before we get them done, right? We have to get our bucket list down before we die, because then our life will be a waste, I think is kind of the sentiment there. And so it's not that we should be living our life worried about our desires, our goals, our plans, right? But if you think about it, if we're living out God's plans for our life, our time, our energy, our task, those things that we do for God will never be wasted, because they are in the hands of a God with an eternal timeline. So when we get to heaven and he weighs out our actions, right, aside from, we're not talking like based on what we do we get salvation. Salvation we get from God through faith, right? That's the side apart. We're talking about the moment where we get into a place where God actually does look at the things that we have said and we do. Those things do matter to him. That those things may have weight in the value or in the currency of heaven, and not just like, oh, you made it to level 1000 in Candy Crush. Cool. Like, awesome accomplishment, right? Obviously an exaggeration, but you get my point. Alrighty. 1 Peter says this. If you address as Father the one who impartially judges according to each one's work, right? What we were just talking about. Conduct yourself in fear during the time of your stay on earth. I love how it says it, your stay on earth, like some kind of vacation. You're welcome to your stay. Enjoy your stay here at Holiday Inn, right? So your stay on earth, something temporary. He's saying, if you call God your Father, the one who judges our works, right? He will it's not just about, oh, I believe in Jesus, he's going to forgive everything. Yes, but it also matters what you do, right? So if you call him Father, then this whole conduct yourself in fear, it's just basically saying, be careful, okay? Watch out. Because he will weigh those things in your life. And so, it's important, right? Philippians 3 says, all they think about, right? And here the they that is talking about worldly minded people, those who have their mind on things of this world instead of things of heavenly importance, right? So all they think about is this life here on earth. But we, here's the contrast, right? Not them, us. But we are citizens of heaven, where the Lord Jesus Christ lives. Crazy, right? We are to think differently. We talked about this last week. We are to think differently because we don't belong here, because we hold our identity in heaven, where Jesus himself lives, right? So every country has a different way of measuring valuable things, or let's just say currency, for example, right? And so if we come with a mindset of valuable things of like here on earth, and we go and we put it on God's measuring weight, or whatever you want to call that, if it's as fleeting as a shadow, or filthy rags as a part of the Bible describes it, then what will we have that is valuable up there in heaven? Nothing, right? You guys gotta really think, like, what I do here on earth, I mean, I can't stress enough, it matters. It matters, it totally matters. James, here's a little harsher language. You adulterers, don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? I say it again. If you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of God. Holy smokes. Okay. The word adulterer, it's referring to a person who is cheating on his or her spouse, right? With another person. So having a love relationship with someone other than who they're married to. The Bible describes us as his bride, so therefore implying that we, as in a marriage relationship, should be exclusive with our love to God. And here it's calling these people who have friendship with the world adulterers, right? And a lot of times with like affairs and stuff, like, oh, we're just friends, right? Here it's saying if you're friends with the world, you're cheating on God. If you hold on to this side, you have no more arms to hold on to God, right? And he's saying, look, you're cheating on God. Look, I'm just going to tell you straight up, if you're going to be friends with the world, you make yourself an enemy with God. An enemy. Okay, guys? Like, that's heavy language. I just love the Bible for how straightforward it can be sometimes. Here, if you are driven, as we talked about in previous chapters, if you are driven by human, earthly-minded motivations, right? We talked about being driven with the love of materialism, or driven by your own fears, or your own desires, your own dreams and goals, exclusively yours. You're driven by feelings of resentment and hate in the past and whatever, right? You're driven by those things. There's no way that you have the ability to also love God with all your mind and heart and strength and soul. You just can't. It's not like literally like in a marriage relationship, right? It's me or him. Somebody gotta go. And so that's the ultimatum that God pulls on us here. Look, it's not that he's over here trying to like be, I don't know how to phrase this exactly. He's not exactly trying to be like a tyrant with his love, but he's just stating a fact. If you love that, you can't also have space for me. And if you don't have space for me, then how could you possibly expect to live in a place of eternal bliss with God if you don't even have space for God in your heart. That's just the truth, right? First Peter says, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires. Another version says, abstain from sinful desires that wage war against your very souls. Look, worldly focus, or keeping your focus on worldly matters, right? That's your priority, whatever that might be, is counterproductive to yourself. Again, it's not like God's being a tyrant and lording his love over you. He's just simply stating a fact that this in the end will hurt you. It will, like the verse says, wage against your very souls. The world says, well, you gotta do you. You gotta take care of yourself. Think about you. The Bible says, if that's your motivation, you are your own idol. And that love for yourself, that exclusive love for yourself, will destroy you. I don't know how else to say that. A lot of people, before coming to Christ, they think, oh, what about this in my life? Or what about that in my life? And God's saying, you gotta let all of that go and come to me, and I'll take care of you. Right? I'm not saying neglect self-care or don't worry about, go out of your house in pantuflas and PJs because it doesn't matter anyways what. I'm not saying don't love yourself, but here it's talking about that kind of love that, like the world says, you focus on you, and that's number one. No, because you are not God. Number one is God, or should be God, right? And if you keep focusing on yourself, on what you want, to be surrounding you, or what you want to build up, that will destroy you. It will destroy your soul, and it wages war against yourself. It's counterproductive. So God then gives us a new identity in eternity, a new homeland in heaven, and a new mission here on earth. 2 Corinthians says, so we are Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. Okay, let's break this down. Ambassadors. An ambassador is someone who is from another country, right? Let's just say, I don't know, France or something. You're from France. And you leave France and you come to the USA or whatever. And so you speak on behalf of your government. You speak on behalf of France to the US. Here, the Bible is saying that we are Christ's ambassadors. So we are in heaven with Christ, right? That's our homeland. And we are coming into this earth as ambassadors. And here, as this verse says very clearly, we are making God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. Here it's plainly speaking about evangelism. It's talking about how we share the gospel. It's talking about how we reach out with the message of heaven to the world. That's our priority. The Great Commission, sharing God's light, is our mission, is what our job or part of our purpose is, right? We glorify God through that because we are announcing him to the world. Right? And so, look, this isn't an easy task, right? And the Bible gives us a warning, right? Because this life, lived this way, this life is not easy. The warning comes in John 15:19. It says, if you were of this world, the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, because of this, the world hates you. Previously in that verse, it talks about how the world hated Jesus because he didn't belong. He wasn't from them. He didn't think like them, right? And so here it's saying, look, if you were of this world, the world would think, oh yeah, I know, they're so awesome. They're one of us, right? But because he chose us, he pulled us out and he made us holy, right? And again, holy is just a fancy word for separate. He separated us from that lifestyle, those ideologies, that way of living. now the world sees us and go, you're not like us. We don't like you. You're not part of the in crowd, right? Kind of thing. And because of that, the world will hate us. But it also, along with the warning, it brings us tons of words of comfort. In John 16, it says, very truly, I tell you, you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. How many times do we see on the news things that the world's like, yay, oh my God, progress, and this is amazing. And we're just like, our hearts are like, oh, no, that's no bueno, right? And that's kind of what this is making reference to. The world will rejoice and we will mourn, but don't worry. And it gives us a promise, right? He will turn your grief into joy. There is joy in this life that he has for us. 2 Corinthians says, so we don't look at the troubles we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen. For the things we see now will soon be gone, but the things we cannot see will last forever. Look, Moses, in the Old Testament, was able to be brave, and he was able to leave Egypt and everything that they had for him, right? Because he was a prince of Egypt. Because he focused, the Bible says he focused on the invisible, right? Basically talking about how godly things, right? What pleased God versus his life here in Egypt, right? And Egypt was a superpower. And we can kind of compare that to our life. In our lives, America is this strong country, debatable, but it's this country, it's this rich country for sure, that tells us, look, you can prosper and you can be, just successful if you are willing to bow down to their ideologies, right? If you're not willing to think the way they think according to politics or according to, everything that goes on in this world that makes you politically correct, then something's wrong with you, right? What do you mean talk? That's hate speech. Stop. We don't want to hear that. And obviously they're going to reject that. They're going to. But what are we going to fight for, right? The things of the world or the truth that God expects us to live through, right? And God, though he knows what he's asking from us is hard, he never leaves us without promise. John 16 says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Fact. But take heart. I have overcome the world. Earth is not our final home. We were created for something so much better. And when life gets tough and when you feel overwhelmed with doubt or you wonder if living for Christ is even worth the effort, you have to remember you're not home yet. You're not there yet. And at death's door, you won't be leaving home. You won't be leaving what you feel is home. You'll be going home, right? Life is a test. Life is hard, right? Life is a trust. It's a temporary assignment. But the question is, okay, then how should the fact that life on this earth is temporary, that it's a temporary assignment, how should that change the way I'm living right now? Right? And we talked about this a little last week. What are things in your life that you're like, I need to stop doing that? I need to start doing that. I need to adjust this area of my life. I need to adjust the way that I'm thinking. If I don't know how, then I need to get into the Word and understand how God wants me to view things through his perspective, right? And what things are just not worth heaven's time. And I leave you with that thought. And hopefully, God willing, we are able to live a life that is worthy of Christ. God bless you guys. See you guys next week.